The Autobahnen, a story of nationalism and a revolutionary project in civil and mechanical engineering for civil and military applications. March 23, 1933. The German Reichstag passes the Enabling Act, giving Adolf Hitler and the National Socialist Party dictatorial control over all levels of German legislature. This would set in motion the historic social, economic, and military policies of pre-World War II Germany and aggravate surrounding nations to prepare for war similarly. One of Hitler's dreams coming into power was of German motorization. The nation, however, was crippled from reparations payments and failed economic stimulus plans of the 1920s. Foreign investors were frightened of entering a sluggish German consumer market, and their struggling industrial sector lacked the ability to produce a car cheap enough to meet the low consumer demand. Hitler, at his core, was a nationalist, and his dream of creating industrialized and motorized Germany helped push these events into motion. In his dreams of cars, he also saw highways, superhighways, that would connect the major urban, industrial, agricultural, and port centers of the country. These roads he called Autobahnen, or car roads. He found a fellow visionary in the person of Fritz Todt, a fellow Nazi who published his own master plan for the restructuring of the German road system in the winter of 1932. He was soon appointed General Inspector of Roads. It was to be an ambitious and expensive project. Todt had envisioned it supported and funded by work creation programs. The difficult part, besides securing up to 3.25 billion Reichsmarks for the superhighways themselves, was Todt's job of rounding up funds for the construction of the equally important feeder roads, rendering the Autobahn inaccessible. Hitler had no enthusiasm for the ordinary roads, and would only serve the purpose of channeling support for the highways. With the helps of loans from the Reichsbank, work programs, and state institutions, Todt cleverly secured the remainder of funds needed for the decade-long project by diverting funds earmarked specifically for the superhighways. 6,500 kilometers of superhighway were planned to be completed between 1933 and 1938, at an estimate of 350 to 500,000 Reichsmarks per kilometer. To increase efficiency and cooperation among Reich transportation officials, Hitler placed the project under direct supervision of General Inspector Todt as a subsidiary entity of the National German Railway, along which the highways would be constructed. Hitler and staff took full advantage of the affair to stage massive propaganda campaigns. In the eyes of some Nazis, the whole project was simply a highly visible propaganda and work creation campaign. The surrounding world and local municipal councils feared that the underlying Todt's plan was a military motive and a heavy influence from the rearmament campaign. Their fears were quite justified. The man next to General Todt who had the most say in Autobahn route planning was the General Zorn, a field expert who had absolute dominion of Autobahn plans considered to be in border-sensitive or military-zoned areas, suggesting plans in the motion of lightning military strikes, otherwise known as Blitzkrieg, into Poland, the Netherlands, France, Czechoslovakia, and the more welcoming Austria. Todt himself described the intent of the capabilities of the new road system to maximize speed of military maneuvers, sustain heavy bombing damage, and permit the travel of tanks. Regardless of the nationalistic and militaristic endeavors behind the Autobahn, it was still an awe-inspiring project in terms of its utilization of new technologies and incredible aesthetic engineering. The German engineers borrowed heavily from similar American projects during the decade. They were also encountering manpower shortages as a result of an increasingly revitalized economy, which benefited tremendously from the project's exclusive use of German firms and raw materials. Also, the highways were helping to facilitate demand for cars. Motorization was working, so they needed the roads done quickly. They used revolutionary techniques of chemically analyzing soil samples from Autobahn route plans, testing composite nature, and using vibration to simulate earthquake conditions. In marshy areas, ground was blasted away and replaced with packed sand and gravel. Cold, frost-prone areas were packed with sand and clay. These fills were compressed into tiny layers using electrical stamping machines. Then the concrete came in. Trains of concrete mixers and distributors moved by rail over the excavations, which had been set with steel plate and bar fixtures. The distribution process moved at 10 meters a minute. The mechanical engineers behind the project had designed distributors that moved quickly using either electricity or compressed air. Finishers then followed and sent vibrations through the concrete, trailed by laborers with wooden platforms to cover the final product. For every 10 to 15 mile stretch, 300,000 Reichmarks went into machinery alone. It was a massive step forward in the fields of civil and mechanical engineering, driven by nationalism. Albion Ross, a reporter with the New York Times, observed the undertaking and said, "The autoways have become big business, and Hitler was free to do with them what he wanted."